Thank you, Megan. Thanks for having me. Good morning. Afternoon. Yes. Yeah, afternoon. It's an honor to be here with you. It's a rousing introduction. And I always wish my mom was here to hear it. You know, it's like that's the moment that any mother would, I think, relish. So, about 15 years ago or so, when I first got into the executive coaching space, I wanted to talk with some really smart people who had grown something from the ground up. You know what I mean? I wanted to talk with people who had truly innovated something. Because I was really interested in this executive coaching space. But 15 years ago, coaching was done by a few psychologists and was really in its infancy in terms of how we had a pretty good idea of what counseling was. But how do we take some of those forms and some of the ways we do things in counseling, and how do we take the positive side of that and help people who maybe aren't experiencing the illnesses that go along with counseling, but just because you needed help and a voice in your life didn't mean that you were sick. And it was really like this huge hodgepodge of people trying to figure it out. And I was really interested in the leadership side of it. So I met this gentleman who was a marketing guru. And his words to me were, avoid the leadership space at all cost. I'm like, I didn't want to hear that. I said, why? He said, because everybody has their own definition of leadership, and they all think they're great at it. And yet, the experience that I have had is totally different from that. Is that they might have their own definition for it, but there are a lot of us trying to figure out how I implement it, how do I actually do it, what makes a difference as I lead. And so, can I get my first slide? Oh, I don't know if I have the right slide deck. But are you nervous? Don't be nervous. I just wanted to show you my granddaughter, Natalie. That was her when she was 1, and she's awesome. And I'm learning what it means to lead as a grandpa, right? Because we have this, there's this amazing new thing called the internet. Have you heard of the internet? It's like awesome if you haven't heard of it. And once. And we get on FaceTime with Natalie. And my wife will be talking to her, and she's right now at a point in her life where she says, "Where's Papa?" Oh, yeah. I'm like, and I just melt. But I'm realizing that she's looking to us as grandparents in some form of a leadership role. And so whether you lead organizations and multi-million-dollar companies, or whether you have people surrounding you in a family structure, leadership is all around us. And many of us have a definition for it. But the question is, do we have the tools that we need to be able to develop ourselves intentionally around it? And that's kind of what I want to chat a bit about with you today. When I went out and did some of the first research, these are kind of some of the pictures that I found, right? There were a lot of different folks in the leadership development space, and lots of them had lots of different messages. And one of the things that just sort of resonated with me was that it wasn't that we necessarily lacked the tools and the resources. It was we weren't implementing what were in these resources. And one of the reasons is that leaders don't have other people to hold them accountable to implement some of these development ideas. So if you're a leader out here today and you're not working with someone, a mentor, a coach, a friend, a best partner, whatever, you need somebody speaking into your life from a relationship aspect, or I can guarantee you might be leading thousands and I'm worried about you. And you might be a coach out there saying, how in the world could I lead somebody who is the CEO at Eli Lilly? How could I do that? And I'm saying, just show up and be. Because that's what they need. You might not have an answer. You might not have PhDs from Oxford and Harvard and whatever, and I'm here to tell you you don't need them. What I'm here to tell you is if you're a really good listener, that's where most of it starts. And you can show up and you can pour into people's lives just by being with them. So, this whole idea of leadership, my wife and I are on vacation. We have a cousin who lives in Hawaii. Yeah, nice. So we went out to Hawaii. We renewed our wedding vows in Hawaii. It was really a special time, our 30 year. 30 years. And Greg is a bit of a, he's been in Hawaii a while. And he's a dad. I don't know if you know much about the lifestyle, but it's pretty laid back, man. It's pretty laid back. And Greg's pretty laid back until he gets in a car and drives. We're driving with him to one of the beautiful beaches, and he's entering an interstate ramp. And there's this whole line of traffic that's merging right with us. You know what I mean? Like the on-ramp and traffic already, and you can tell. And he just floors it. And I mean, had to have been at least 90, 95 miles an hour. And we are just passing all of these cars, and he gets to the end of the exit ramp, and he just pulls in front. And seriously, I thought he was going to clip the car right next to him. I'm so thankful he didn't. We get out in front of that entire group, and he turns to me. I'm sitting in the front seat, and he said, I just had to be the leader. And and that just hit me. Like, how many folks in organizations are like running past all of the experiences they need to have just because they think that leadership is the out front piece. It's not. I teach a course for a biotech company out in California, and we call it Lead from the Chair That You Sit In. Because everyone here today has some capacity, some idea to lead. And that's what I want to chat with you about. So you have a yellow sticky note. You need your yellow sticky note. Here's what I'd like for you to do. I'm going to split this room right in half. So you're going to have to declare Republican or Democrat. There we go. We went like this. I'm not going to say which one's which. I'm not going there. I know better. Right down the middle, right? So I have a group over here, and I have a group over here, all right? My group over here, don't go anywhere. I'm going to give you some instructions in just a second. I'm going to give these guys some instructions first, all right? Here's what I would like my group right here to do. On your yellow sticky note, I'd like for you first to think of a great leader in your life. Someone who you know. Great leader. And so not Abraham Lincoln or Mother Teresa, because none of you look old enough to know them personally, even though they were great leaders. I want you to think of a great leader in your life, somebody that you know. And I'd like for you to think of a characteristic that makes them great. What is a characteristic about them that makes them great? Take that characteristic and transfer it to your sticky note. Got it? You understand? Perfect. I told you I was coming back. I'd like for you guys to think of an exceptionally poor leader. Someone in your life who is an exceptionally poor leader. No names, might be sitting next to you. On the yellow one. And write that characteristic, what makes them a poor leader on that characteristic. You understand what I'm asking you to do? Perfect. We're going to have a little controlled chaos here in just 1 minute. My group that has exceptionally great leader, what I would like for you to do is I'd like for you to bring your sticky notes. Where am I going to put? I'm going to put this up here, I think, so we can get a good look at it together. Here's what I'd like for you to do. Bring your sticky notes up and put your sticky notes in one of 3 categories for me, right? If you think your sticky note, if you think that the characteristic has something to do with IQ, how intelligent the leader is, you're going to take your sticky note and you're going to place it in this section labeled IQ. If you think it has to do with the person's technical skill, their technical abilities at execution, for example, you're going to put it in this category. If you think it has to do with something around the idea of emotional intelligence, right? Being intelligent with connecting with people, that emotional side, you're going to put it right up here in the middle. All right? My group that has the characteristics with an exceptionally poor leader on it. I really have to think about that before I say it. I used to say my exceptionally poor leader group, and that's not what I mean, right? You're a characteristic of an exceptionally poor leader. You are going to bring your sticky notes up to the flip chart. Same instructions. IQ, technical skill, or emotional intelligence. Whatever that means to you, whatever any of those mean to you, you're going to put it in one of those categories. All right? So bring your sticky notes up to the front and vote. Vote with your feet. See what we get. See what we get. I'm sorry? Oh. Yeah, I can hold this one over here. Oops, I'm sorry. I'm just going to hold this so it doesn't do the best job we can. Yeah. Sometimes, that's good. Okay. Will it hold it? Yeah. Wow. So I'm always curious about this, right? And there's some folks who are still voting. Nice. So if these charts could talk, right? If they could talk, what would these charts tell us? We don't even know what's on there, right? But what would they tell us about leadership? What do you think? What would they tell us? Yeah.
People care less about how smart you are.
Yeah, interesting. So there does seem to be that piece to it. Did you? Social skills seem to be lacking in leaders. So on this side, you were okay. Good. Other thoughts? If these charts could talk, what would they say? Yeah. That it's important to be relational. Good. Yeah, please, in the back. How you work and how the expression happens there, right? Let me give you some flavor as to how you voted here. So on the exceptionally poor leader side, we have things like self-serving, pride, critical, self-absorbed. I'm just reading, right? Anger comes through. Obtuse, passive communication, domineering. here's the question though, do these folks get up in the morning and say, I'm going to be this way? I don't think so. I used to get really nervous. So we do a lot of training with leaders in the area of emotional intelligence. And I've been doing this now for about 12 years. We've done it on 4 continents. Doesn't matter where we are in the world, it always ends up this way. I used to get really nervous because if it doesn't end up this way and you're training emotional intelligence, you got a really long day, right? But it does. And so I'm fascinated by that. On the great leader side, we end up with things like perspective, humility, integrity, inspirational, trust, innovative, energy, positive in all areas. So can you palpably feel the difference? Yeah. So if you're a leader, why would you not want to be on this side? And yet, when tension and complexity come into our lives, and we start to feel the pressure of it all, so many of the folks that I get to work with default, and these are the kinds of behaviors that start to show up. So how do you innovate? How do you inspire others when this is the kind of leader that we get to experience? And I wish I could tell you that my experience was different in the church. But it's not. My experience is not different. And that to me is a curiosity. That to me is a curiosity that we probably don't have time to explore today, but I would ask all of us to remain curious as we go into our own and develop our own leadership stories. You see, emotional intelligence is this capacity. Capacity connotes a volume. And volumes, what we know about volumes is we can measure them. And we actually can measure your emotional intelligence. And there are ways to do that. There are some pretty good assessments out there for it. And if you're interested in that, more information on that, I can get you that. But it's really effectively recognizing and managing. So the idea here is that, in fact, if you want to be an innovative leader, and you have to be able, first and foremost, to recognize that this is how you're showing up. You see, most of the people, so now if we went and surveyed every leader that you were thinking of, we would probably get about 98% of them that would put themselves on this side of the room. Are you with me? Where's the breakdown? You see, I don't think the breakdown necessarily is in intention. The breakdown is in the outcome. The breakdown is that they don't see it. That's the value that the coach brings. Because the coach is a safe place to show up alongside of a leader and say, this is what I'm seeing. Are you seeing this too? Can you, in fact, transform that to that? Yeah, I think you can. I think that's what development and that's what leadership development is all about. But we all know it has to go beyond a book. Because otherwise there wouldn't be 20 books written on crucial conversations. You know what I mean? We would have one, we would read it, we would get it, and it wouldn't be an issue. But it does continue to seem to be an issue. You see, what leaders, I believe, that there are a couple of things that leaders get rewarded for. And one of those is the relationships that they have with their followers. And the others is the decisions that they make. It's about judgment. right? It's about leaders becoming wise, right? It's about developing wisdom in your leadership. This slide's probably a little bit difficult to see, but it's we're blogging on this in about 3 weeks. We're going to develop a whole series as we're putting together a picture in the leader development space about the development of the human psyche. And what needs to go into leader development? What are the elements that are crucial for leaders to be able to develop? We believe it starts at the very core of where the person is with what's called their worldview, their values, their beliefs, right? If you believe that God is love and that God loves people, how do you treat them that way? Where's the disconnect in between leadership and basic core values, right? We then want to talk about affective emotion. So happy, sad, disgust, why feelings happen inside of leadership. It would be malpractice probably for us not to consider the personality of the human. Right? What are their preferences? Do they extrovert? Do they introvert? Are they thinkers or feelers? And there's lots of tools there to help you do that as well. This idea. Then there's another type of emotional intelligence that becomes important. It's called trait emotional intelligence, and there are competencies built that can actually be measured. So things like someone's self-assurance. Their self-awareness, their confidence, things like their stress tolerance, their interpersonal relationships. So that from an emotional standpoint, what does it mean for me to interact with you as another human being? And these kinds of traits can be measured. Then we think about skills and talents. Tools that you might be familiar with, things like StrengthsFinder, fit right in this category, right? So as you start thinking about what does it mean to develop leaders, it's a big picture and it's a holistic picture that needs to be incorporated. This is Calvin and Hobbes. You guys like Calvin and Hobbes? This is kind of small, but what Calvin has is one of the little paddles with a ball on the end of it, right? And he's trying to get it to work. He can't get it to work, and he says, I can't help but wonder what kind of desperate straits would drive a man to invent this kind of thing. What is it? What is a link between leadership and innovation? As you think about developing yourself as a leader, whether you are a leader currently or you're a coach trying to figure out what space in the world you fit in, what are some linkages between innovation and your emotional intelligence to develop the leader you need to be? That's what I want to chat with you about. So I want to start actually inside of an emotional intelligence leadership assessment that we use when we work with leaders. There are 6 competencies that we talk about that relate directly, statistically, to this idea of innovation, of you being an innovative type of leader. Self-actualization. This means, are you bringing meaning and purpose into your life? Be amazed the number of leaders I work with who are leading organizations who feel like their lives are meaningless. Meaningless. And so we want to get some measure of meaning and purpose in your life. Independence. Independence says, am I emotionally independent of others in my outside world, Or do I need to depend emotionally on you for my own value in this world? Great leaders tend to have an independence. They find value in themselves, and then their ability to find value in themselves, they can leave themselves and come and find value in you, right? Independence. Problem solving. A plus B plus C equals problem solved. Right? That's the linear sort of data-driven problem-solving model. I've got A input, B input, C input, and if I got all those inputs, then I can solve my problem, which is D. However, our world doesn't exist that way. Are any of you old enough to remember the original Star Trek movie? Or the Star Trek show with Captain Kirk? The original Captain Kirk? Yeah, raise your hand if you can. Yeah, I remember that, yeah. Captain Kirk was Gene Roddenberry was a genius, an absolute genius. He was the writer and producer of that series. And Captain Kirk was the sine qua non of leadership, right? And he had all of these inputs coming in at him from different emotional directions, if you will. He had Mr. Spock. Remember Mr. Spock? Live long and prosper, right? Right. He was Vulcan. He didn't have emotion. He was the data input into the problem. And then do you remember the chief engineer? Scotty, right? He was the one, the engines. I can't get any more out of them, Jim. He saw his engines as people. He was so emotional, right? So Scotty brings the emotion, Spock brings the data, and through all of these characters, Captain Kirk is able to go out and seek new lives and new life forms, right? So he brings all of these pieces together. Problems don't just have data. They have emotions. And leaders get fixated emotionally on data points. And sometimes they get fixated on data points that don't matter. And that's what problem solving is all about. Assertiveness. Are you willing to be able to assert yourself, even in times of tension and complexity? Can you do it at the right time with the right level of emotion? Flexibility. Do you as a leader have an ability to be able to experience a wide range of emotions? Or does everything that comes to you get the same emotional response? I'm coaching a young lady right now at a biotech company out in California. She's really bright. She's really articulate. And every time, and she has about 6 or 7 peers of hers. She's the operations leader. And she has 6 or 7 peers who come to her for operational kinds of data and input and ideas. And every time one of her peers comes to her, the answer is no. No. And now nobody wants to work with her. She sees herself as the steward of the company. She is the one keeping this company afloat with all of the, and it's quite, in her heart, it's noble. And in everyone else's heart, they don't want to work with her because she's inflexible. Right? She thinks she's noble. They think she's inflexible and they don't want to work with her. How do you help her see that? How do you help her tangibly? Her intention is not malice. So the role of the coach or the role of the leader is to show up in her life and help her be able to see the difference. That's flexibility. And the last one in terms of innovation and helping people leaders be innovative is what we call optimism. It's resiliency. It's not if you're going to have a setback in life, it's when. The question becomes, how do you respond? Right? So optimism has to do with when the chips are down, they're down on you. How do you see that, and how are you framing that? in terms of your ability to be able to have hope for the future. So I kind of wanted to, I thought it'd be kind of fun if we just work through 2 or 3 of these together today. Because remember that everybody has a definition for leadership and everybody thinks they're really, really good at it. And yet sometimes some of us need to work and to develop in some of these areas. Let me tell you just a little bit of a story on this first one, self-actualization. This is a project that I did with a marketing director at one of the internet companies out in San Francisco. You probably wouldn't know their name, but if you Googled them, you might. And that was a hint. And he was having trouble with the project that he was working on and the team that he was working with, finding meaning and purpose in his life. So we decided to do what's called a live 360. So 360-degree feedback is an idea where a leader has a team, and you get feedback from everybody on the team. And how I do it is I usually go then in a closet, sit down with a leader, and we read through that and come up with an action plan. But Ryan didn't want to go into a closet. He wanted to do it in a public sort of way. So I gave him 4 leadership questions to think about, and he went off by himself to think about those 4. Then I stood in the room and asked his team the same 4 questions, and we were going to do sort of a Johari window for Ryan. What does Ryan know about Ryan? And what does Ryan not know about Ryan? What does the team know about Ryan? And what does the team not know about Ryan? And we were going to see if we couldn't help him find some meaning and purpose in the work that he was doing. So we started it and we used sticky notes. And everybody answered the questions and then brought them up to the wall and we started to categorize them. And two things really came out about Ryan. The first was that he was not having fun anymore in his life, in his work. It had become so tactical and so mundane that he'd lost his spark, and his team could feel it. And I knew right then that we were onto something, because I had experienced something really similar to him when I had my job at Eli Lilly. I had the coolest job. It was for a cool company, and I was on the 2nd floor, all glass windows for my office, overlooked this beautiful water feature. We don't have ponds or lakes or oceans in Indiana. We have water features, right? So there's this beautiful fountain thing. And I get a knock on my door, and it's Rafael Sanchez. He's the VP. And Rafi says, "Hey, Scott, guess what?" "What?" He says, "We're moving you and your team." And I'm thinking, see, they've seen what a great job we're doing. Probably going over to the corporate center. They want us closer to the heartbeat of the business. They put us in the basement. Bricks in the back corner. The air conditioning, I don't think, worked half the time. Went from loving life, loving the job, and just a physical move like that can put you in such a bad space, Are you watching out for that in your leadership? That's what happened to Ryan. Ryan had this shift happen where he had this product that he'd had and he loved it and he loved marketing it, and then they gave him, in the pharmaceutical world, you can use products for more than one thing. They're called indications. So you can have a cancer drug for kidney cancer, and then you can have that same drug and it'll work on bladder cancer, right? So it's got different indications. So Ryan had this drug for one indication, and they gave him another indication, but no more resources to do it. And it just, who knows why these things happen, but it just took the wind out of his sail. And his team comes up and says, "Ryan, you're not having fun anymore." That's what we learned from that group 360. That they saw him over here, and it was because he wasn't having fun anymore. Isn't that interesting? I thought it was fascinating, right? So, what do? You're in leadership development. What do? You teach them how to have fun, right? You go get yo-yos for people, and you get rings that light up, right? And you do that kind of stuff in the meeting, and you have to be intentional with your development. And so I loved the VeggieTales speaker, Phil. I was just sitting in my seat thinking, you know, it was so cool because could you see Phil's life path? As he described himself, not wanting to be on a football team or going to a sporting event, but wanting to be in his basement, what was fun for him? And did you notice that he went all the way back to his childhood? And he found what I'm actually blogging on this on Monday. So if you're interested in this topic, you can drscottlivingston.com, and you can get the blog. We're going to be talking about what we're calling unique giftedness. So if you're struggling with your mission, your vision for innovation in your coaching practice, there are these tools called deep psychology, and you go back to your childhood, and what were you good at as a kid? Think about that for a minute. When you were a kid, what did you do best? Yeah, that's what I like to hear. What were you good at? Do you remember when life was fun? Now, I realize in a room this size, there are probably some folks whose childhood maybe had some pain in it. And I want to acknowledge that. And I also want to acknowledge that most of us can think of times in life where we were just in a zone and we had fun. What was that like for you? Can you start tying things together that were fun? I got to tell you, in my own life, I had a great family. We spent a ton of time together, and I had a few chores that I had to get done every morning, and then I got to go out to play. And I can just remember playing. We played baseball when it was baseball season. We played football when it was football season. We played basketball. We played board games at night. We would go to Grandma and Grandpa's house, and we would play who could get up the flagpole the fastest. We would time each other, right? We would play. We would play wiffle ball. We would play golf. I just loved to play as a kid, right? And so now I've started to think about what is my own unique giftedness. And I'm not in business anymore. I just play. I just go and play. So people ask me to do keynotes, and I come with sticky notes because I just want to play with you all, and I want to just have fun and see where it is that we might be able to end up together. It's just play for me. Now, for you, it might be very different, right? For Phil, it was different. It was about creativity and drawing and what did he call them? Photon light things or whatever? I mean, that was like so cool, right? But you could just see VeggieTales in his future. As you lead, my question is, what was your unique giftedness? Because I think that if you go back and think about where you've really had fun, that's your unique giftedness. And no matter what your vocation is, why not work there? Why not just have fun? It doesn't have to be serious all the time, the weight of the Lord on my heart. I mean, I don't want to, but why not just have fun? Have fun. So, my first message to you, if you're going to innovate your life, if you're going to innovate your practice, is stop trying to replicate other people and just start having fun. All right, the second thing I want to talk to you about is flexibility. If you're going to innovate, when things come at you, you need to think about your emotional response. You need to think about if this always has made me angry in the past, why does it have to make me angry now? I just did my taxes. Did anybody not do their taxes? Okay, IRS, you can leave now. They've all done their taxes. Right? Everybody just did their taxes, right? So I get this tax bill from my accountant. Well, actually it's from the IRS, but the note was from the accountant. It was a pretty big number. And there was a time in my life where I would have been mad. I would have been on the phone getting me a new accountant because it was his fault, right? So I was sat down, I showed my wife the tax bill, and she was like, ooh, where are we going to get the money for that? I said, I don't know. We'll figure it out. She said, you seem calm. I said, what am I going to do? I got to pay it. I don't know. We're going to figure it out. Let's go have some fun and figure out how we're going to do this. Right? So you can choose. I think as you're thinking about how to be flexible with emotion, as things come at you as a leader, as when people come into your office and it's just not quite the way you thought it should have been, can you choose a different response? Right? That's what emotional flexibility is. So that's what I want to do with you guys right now. So what I'd like for you to do, we're going to get, because you got to change. All right. So here, you use your blue sticky note. How am I doing on time, by the way? I don't see a clock.
Yeah, you got like 5 minutes.
Okay, great. Blue sticky note. Yeah, right. I just rethought my whole presentation, right, in 5 minutes. So blue sticky note, right? Here's what I want you to do. I want you to put your knee-jerk reaction, first thing that comes to your mind. You're going to write it down. I'm going to say a phrase, and you're going to write it down. You ready? Yeah. Organizational politics. All right, got it? You're going to get back up. You're going to come up. If your comment is positive, you're going to put it on the plus sign. If it's negative, you're going to put it on the minus sign. Wish I had a camera right now. Huh? Oh, over there. The minus. All right. Well, I think we've got a quorum, right? I think we got a quorum. Unless the rest of you are positive, what is going on here? You can put it in the middle. Put it right in the middle. Megan, what's going on here? Huh? Okay, since I'm going to run out of time, I'm going to talk while you walk. How about that? I'm going to talk while you walk. Hey, you guys, can I ask you, I want to ask you this, right? Organizational politics is just a thing, right? It's just, it doesn't have emotion to it. It's just the description of something, and yet we assign negative emotion to something that is inert. Organizational politics is actually a necessity. You would not have an organization if you didn't have organizational politics. If there weren't ways and means and budgets and people arguing for how to spend resources and do things, organizations wouldn't exist. And yet we put this negative connotation to it. So I maintain that as a leader, when people say things to you like organizational politics, I want you to step back and say, do I have the flexibility of emotion to be able to choose which side it goes on? Okay, I don't want to belabor that point because I got one more thing I want to do with you. So I think inside of this flexibility piece, it's seeing things as learning and not as failure. So as you approach flexibility, you never fail, you learn. You learn. Failure, As far as I'm concerned, you can take it out of your vocabulary. It's not, there's no such thing as failure. It's all learning. It's just all learning. So the last one I want to talk to you about is resiliency. I got one more exercise I want to do with you. You're going to need a pen and a paper and a blank. Just a scrap piece of paper is fine. You're going to label it 1 to 5. I'm going to give you 12 seconds. I'm going to give you ciphers. Ciphers are word puzzles. The letters are all mixed up, and you're going to rearrange the letters into words. These words are at a 6th grade reading level, so you will know these words. I'm going to give you 12 seconds. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to go to the next word. Are you ready for your first word? All right, unscramble it. This is a work on your own, no cheating off your neighbor. All right, here's what I want you to do, is I want you just to go through how many people think they got one right? One right, 1, 2. How many people think they got 2? No. Nobody? 3, 4, 5? Anybody get all 5? Okay. Here's what I want you to do, is I want you to think about your thought life as you were doing these ciphers, anagrams. I want you to think about what you were saying to yourself when I put the first one up there. Some of you are saying, oh, I like word puzzles. Some of you were saying, oh, if this was math, I would win. So you get to the second one, and you're like, oh, it's missing an E. And you get to the third one, and you're like, I quit. I'm not going to tell anybody I quit, but mentally, you quit. Right? So what I want you to do is just think about what you thought about as the different words came around. And then on a scale of 1 to 10, on number 1, 10 is high, 1 is low. How hard did you try on the first one? Did you give it your all on the first one? Did you try as hard as you could, give yourself a 10? Then when it got to the 5th one, how hard did you try? Were you trying as hard on the 5th one as you were on the first? That's the mental picture for optimism. You see, because these are isolated, independent events. And yet we link them together, and we get a feeling of despair when we don't get them right. My question is, did you stay around long enough in the game to catch the crooks? Or did you quit before the 5th one? Happens. Optimism is resiliency. It's not if you're going to have a setback in life, but when. Probably the number one thing that gets in the way of innovation is people quit too soon. It's the age-old story of Thomas Edison and the light bulb. When asked how he did it, he said, I don't know, but I can tell you 10,000 ways not to do it. He didn't quit. And what about you? Just because you don't have 50 coaching clients doesn't mean that you're not in the right space. You got to stay with it, learn, and keep moving forward. You guys, I just want to say I wish you all the best. You're all superstars. You all have what it takes to do this. If you go through a great program, you get some training, right? Stay with your unique giftedness. That's what got you to where you are. That's what's going to finish. Megan, thank you for allowing me the opportunity just to come and share.